Expelling me from the APC will cause more crisis, says Zamfara APC chieftain Senator Garba Marafa, while he threatens Buni. And World Bank blames terrorism for economic decline in Nigeria. This is Plus Politics. I'm Mary Anako. A chieftain of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC from Zamfara State, Senator Kabiru Garba Marafa, has brushed off threats by the governor, May Buni-led caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the party to throw him out of the APC, saying doing so would only aggravate the problems afflicting the party. Marafa urged Governor Buni to respect the rule of law, saying the Yobe State governor should stop deluding himself as the national chairman of the APC, declaring that he is the only chairman of the party's convention planning committee. Marafa threatened to institute legal actions against Governor Buni's CECPC over what he termed as gross violations of the party's constitution in the conduct of the party affairs. Now, the party had also threatened to wield the big stick, saying Marafa's actions and utterances constitutes insubordination and reduction of party issues to a personality contest. Well, joining us to discuss this is Adaji Usman. He's a publicity secretary of the All Progressive Congress at the FCT chapter. And we also have Biodun Sowunmi, a political analyst, joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Sowunmi, for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Let's start with you. This is very interesting. This is not also the first time we're talking about the internal crisis within the APC, but it seems to be getting to a boiling point. And Marafa now seems to be the one who is, attacking the leadership of the party. But not just Marafa. We see issues around the country. I'd like to remind you that River State still has its party issues. We have the Senator Abe faction, and we also obviously have the faction that is led by the Minister for Transportation. I mean, I could list all of the problems that, the party is facing, but why do you think that Marafa is so hell-bent on taking on the Buni-led APC?
Yes, APC has its own share of political problems when it comes to in terms of its internal organization and management of political affairs. We have seen how parallel congresses were held in quite a number of states controlled by the APC. We also know already that the convention conducted, called and presided over by Buni, itself is questionable given a prior decision of the court, judgment of the court involving the Biodun State government. We already know that APC may be on the slippery road in terms of the legality of the convention itself. Now, with Senator Marafa, its own issue is very clear. He's complaining about the extension of the tenure of the Convention Planning Committee. In his view, the Convention Planning Committee should have ceased to exist, after the last convention. And he felt that it is only the National Executive Committee of APC that could reconstitute or constitute a new Convention Planning Committee. And given the fact that this has not taken place because no NEC meeting has actually taken place, is of the view that the Buni's Convention Planning Committee is acting ultra vires of the rules and constitutions of the APC, and therefore is threatening to challenge it in court. Of course, the chairman will have none of that. Of course, he's the chairman of the Convention Planning Committee. I think he got carried away when he threatened to get him expelled from APC. Of course, the Convention Planning Committee does not have such power. It is only, the National Executive Committee of the party that can do that, or suspension at the ward level, which is quite clear, or by the National Working Committee of National Executive Council Acts, it may apply. Not a Convention Planning Committee who would choose to sack a member. And that is why the senator is challenging, the chairman. It's gradually becoming like a major tussle between himself and the convention chairman. And because he believes the law is on his side, so therefore he's open to test it in court. Be that as it may, it will only create another new round of uncertainty, not only surrounding the past convention, but also a future one. Because if he ends up to be right, then APC will have a problem. It means the first convention is being challenged, may not be capped, and then you are going into another hole, which a minor hole, which also may mean it's not legal. If you are to look at it from the face value, rather than studying the constitution properly or waiting for the courts to interpret the constitution. So I think this is the risk APC is taking in this phase of with Marafa on this matter.
I want to quickly ask, could this have been avoided? Because this is not the first time that threats of taking the party leadership to court has been made. I remember before the last I think that they had re-registrations for their members, and we saw a lot of disagreements across the country. And then of course before the Congresses also, we've seen several threats. Could the APC at the national level have avoided all of this? Because it seems to keep, if it's like a hydra-headed monster that every time you cut off one head, another one grows up. And this time it's Senator Marafa. Next time it could be another person. Could this have been avoided?
Yes, it's totally avoidable. If you look at the problem the party is facing in terms of how he's managing his affairs, it centers around the observance of rules of the same political party. That is the constitution of APC. The challenges being thrown or hoped to be thrown, at the party leadership is simply over what people think are lack of respect, for the rules of the party. In the case of Marafa, this is easily avoidable. It's just a matter of calling National Executive Council Committee and then get the NEC to reconstitute the Convention Planning Committee. That is if Marafa is right in the first instance. And if you look at the other problems besetting all the states, many of the state chapters, is simply, again, avoidable. If you remember, including Festus Keyamo, a serving minister, actually warned the party about the implication of the Odo judgment, that it may mean that the current leadership of APC leadership will be thrown into question. And they felt it is better to sort that out now, which was not heeded. And because of that, it could also be a matter for adjudication. So when you look at the two situations we're talking about, they are totally avoidable. But Nigeria being what it is, many people thought we can do it, get away with it, we'll get this man to back off, or get that to back off. But forgetting the fact that that is not the right way to go. It is better to stick, by the rules, governing the conduct of political affairs of any party than to seek to circumvent them.
Let's talk about what happened this morning. We all woke up to the story of the office, the national headquarters of the APC being cordoned off and, surrounded by security officials because of a threat that they suspected. And this again calls to question what the party really is doing to deal with its issues, whether internally or nationwide. We haven't heard anything as to that threat, but we did hear it and see, videos coming from the, party headquarters this morning. What are your thoughts?
Well, the reasons for the deployment of the police force to APC headquarters is not perfect. The reason is very clear. The goal of the police is to ensure the security of the building and people working inside the building. Tempers are building up, they're flaring up. There are contending forces within the APC, both at state level and we're beginning to have, at national level, Marafa, challenging the convention planning committee. So the worry for the police is how do we ensure that none of the factions jostling currently, spring a surprise by coming to occupy the secretariat or sacking the elected officials unlawfully or illegally, and for them, it's a major issue. There's also the worry about the use of thugs. And yes, the police is right in this instance, to take a proactive step, to protect the APC secretariat, provided the workers are allowed to continue, to function inside that secretariat, and elected officials are allowed to continue, or non-officials are allowed to continue, to operate within the secretariat. Otherwise, the police have no business interfering in the internal affairs of a political party. But within the context of protecting lives and properties, then I think they have acted in a proactive way.
Let's talk about the suspension of the Congress in Zamfara. They had ward congresses, but then they suspended those activities. I'd like to quote the APC in Zamfara State. They said that they explained that they temporarily suspended the activities of the Zamfara ward congresses and the committee because it received intelligence reports on it. Now, Senator John Akpanu-Daidere, the National Secretary, and of course the caretaker and Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee gave this explanation today on Monday in Abuja. He said that their attention had been brought to the ununiformed and misguided comments made by Senator Marafa regarding the APC congresses held in Zamfara on Saturday, November 13. He said, while the APC will not join issues with Senator Marafa, who's supposed to be the party's leader in Zamfara, but chooses to denigrate the party and its leaders, he said it's important to set the record straight. For avoidance of doubt, Akpanu-Daidere, still speaking, said, the APC received intelligence reports bordering on security of the Zamfara APC Ward Congress Committee, hence the need for us to temporarily suspend the activities. He said it was necessitated by a letter of November 5 to the chairman of the committee, Alhaji Ibrahim Kabir Masari. So they're saying that they're going to have more and more consultations. Now, we also know that I think about 47 young people from Katuzu Ward in Bade local government area have dumped the APC for the PDP. And this is also because of all of the infighting within the party. Now, we know that the elections are around the corner. Next year is campaign season, so we're going to see a lot more of these crisscrossing. Many pundits early this year had said that the APC might not necessarily stand strong as it was in 2015, come 2023. And many others have said that, well, it's just one of those things that happens just before the election season. But do we see a strong and formidable APC come 2023 with all that's been happening and all that's not been addressed?
Yes, let me just briefly comment on Zamfara before, talking broadly about the issues raised. In the case of Zamfara, it has always been a very hot potato. We remember the outcome of last election. We all knew what happened in Zamfara State. Marafa has a very strong character, very strong-willed person, highly influential within Zamfara State, and therefore capable of creating problems if he's not happy with a particular situation. Now, in relation to APC threats to expel Marafa, I don't see what the party stands to gain because it's more likely going to create more problems for the APC. You're likely going to see more defections if that happens, and that may threaten the party's chances of being able to occupy the seat of power. Now, broadly on APC chances generally in the coming elections, now more broadly, the party standing certainly is very, very low with the public, not only with politicians, but with ordinary members of the public. We have seen most of the promises betrayed, in terms of there's increase in fuel price, the value of naira to dollar is not parity. We now have a huge gap between the naira and the dollar, currently trading at about 540 naira to a dollar. We have never gotten this bad when it comes to exchange rate. We also know that the cost of living is going up and workers' salaries are not being increased. So consequently, many workers are receiving pay cuts. That's what it means. And there are huge number of people, caught in the poverty trap. We have 10 million kids, who are roaming the streets. They're called street kids, Almajiri, or whatever name they call. They don't seem to have any future, or they are not stakeholders within their own country. It's not only that we have huge security problem, and nation has never been so badly threatened as we have now. The country is being challenged from left, right, and center by those who think that their hopes and aspirations are not being realized and asking for the right to self-determination. So all these factors certainly must have impacted so much on APC to the extent that the party needs to reflect on realistically on what their chances are and what do they need to do to retain power. One of the major issues that will determine whether the party can retain power or remain as one is the question of who becomes the presidential candidate of the APC. If you have the presidential candidate of APC emerging in a way that all the party gladiators and rank and file across the country are able to embrace the person, then maybe that can give a new cause for hope, optimism for APC. But if the party still
does the issue of zoning not come to play here? Let's not forget. The issue of zoning is a big deal. So whether the gladiators ban behind a particular person, or not, does zoning not come to play? Because if everybody likes a particular person but not from the zone that everybody wants, that person to come from. Right now, the South is canvassing for a president. Whether he's going to be from the Southeast or she's going to be from the South or the Southwest is another issue. But then the South is angling for something. So what if the party gladiators are not standing behind the Southern agenda? What then?
That is the point I was about to make before your interjection. What you see is that the party is divided. When it comes to presidential ticket, the party is divided into two. You have the North and the South. We have seen the powerful governors, from the North align with the traditional rulers from the North to challenge their Southern governments, on their position that the North should allow the next presidential candidate of APC to come from the South. That is currently being challenged, and that will pose a major problem, not only for the party, but for the country, if they are not able to resolve this amicably. In my view, and rightly so, many people think that given the challenges the country is faced with, it is a lot better and in our national interest, to allow the South to produce the next presidential candidate. The North cannot say they are relying on chair number to decide that, because you have different ethnic groups, over 350 distinctive languages, within the country, and therefore it is not a straightforward matter like that. It is not a matter where you bring in people, you have the roaming nomads, Fulani across the whole of West Africa coming in to vote in Nigeria, and then you claim you have majority. That will not be acceptable to people in the north, particularly
but there are people who actually claim that that is an allegation and that it is baseless, that outsiders are being allowed to vote in the country, in the northern part of the country.
It's no more an allegation. If you remember the last election, the president of the Niger Republic came to Kano and openly campaigned. It's no more an allegation. Now, we have seen, we have seen Fulani herdsmen, moving across the border, with ease, in thousands, roaming all over the whole country. And currently, we are doing registration. Nobody's going to stop them. They're doing national ID card, joining the national ID card scheme. No one is stopping them because we have been told that all Fulanis, no matter where they are one, and they're from Nigeria. That is the argument being pushed by their psychic. So when you have that situation on your hand, where people can freely move from one part of the country, outside the country, to a part of the country, and then they are allowed to stay, to do whatever they like. Of course, people are bound to start asking questions that when you talk about majority, is that majority, does that include those who are moving in or out of the country at different points in time? But the fact of the matter is an internal problem of APC that we're really focusing on. At the end of the day, if they failed to resolve this issue amicably, we may end up with a fractured APC or with a depleted APC or an APC that will lose power at the center. This is the reality of the matter. The issues are so far-fetched, the sentiments are so deep, and therefore, I don't think we can easily crack over, paper over the cracks if, for instance, the next presidential candidate is not from the South. I think this would deepen or worsen, the unity of the country.
Quickly, this is my last question before we wrap things up. You obviously are aware of the fact that the Lagos panel for the NSAS and police brutality has presented its report to the governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Now, that is just Lagos. Of course, this is where soldiers actually shot at protesters. And we've seen some of the excerpts of that particular report. It's not been made public, of course, but in due course, there have been several demands that have been made, key points that that committee has made. Now, the federal government seems to be a bit tight-lipped on this particular issue, and of course, presidential spokespersons, two of them, had spoken on this issue earlier on and had one way or the other said that nothing of any sorts, there was no bloodshed at the toll gate. Does this also play into, does this play negatively or will it play positively if the government decides to speak on the issue? I mean, the federal government. Will this one way or the other also be a deciding factor for 2023, being that the presidency is of the APC?
The NSAS panel report, which is out currently, is a leaked one, even though the Lagos State government has not denied the authenticity of that report. The government has actually set up a review committee, which is correct, to produce a white paper, on all the issues raised in that report. The government is right on that. Now, in relation to the findings of that report, the finding is so damning that many people are embarrassed by it, in the sense that our children were complaining about police brutality, police extrajudicial killings of youths in the country, only for us to end up trying to disperse the same youths using soldiers who, in the first instance, are never trained in the art of peacemaking. They are never trained in the art of policing. They are trained to kill. So we ended up deploying soldiers. I don't know what we think soldiers were going there to do with guns. They went there with guns. So we saw so many casualties, and then the same police officers accused, the police force accused of extrajudicial killing, by men of SARS, came back to do a mop-up killing, according to that report, if that report is accurate, to do a mop-up killing. It's quite unfortunate that we could reduce, ourselves to this level where our youths are seen as, legitimate targets for they are again, to be shot at, anyhow. And what is so amazing is the fact that it's actually the peaceful protesters that were shot. I don't have an issue if the police are trying to contain those who are burning police barracks, killing police officers, burning TBC, burning Lagos State government buses. I don't have an issue with that. They need to arrest those situations at that point in time. But arresting those situations does not mean you need to go to where there are peaceful protesters who sat down singing national anthem and then start shooting at them. In any case, we should not forget, for those who argue that the government declared coffee, I'll say yes, the Lagos State government declared coffee, but the coffee was to commence at 9. The shooting started at 7. So 2 hours before the coffee commenced. So what happened at Lekki Toll Gate is totally unacceptable. On the role of the federal government did not help matters at all. We have the information minister. I wonder what he will now say to the public. I wonder what else Alhaji Lai Mohammed will say now that many people take it seriously. He came out openly to say these are reports of massacres without dead bodies. Now, we have seen that the massacres have dead bodies, and that has been made impossible. Again, the Minister for Information went as far as asking CNN to do a retraction and apologize for his reportage, on the incident, on the killings in Lagos. But we've also seen that CNN is right. So I don't know what else he has to do other than to eat the humble pie. He shouldn't have opened his mouth. He shouldn't have commented the way he commented without investigation. Wow. If I were the Minister for Information at that point in time, I'll be sticking clearly, to the government line that, look, a panel has been set up to look into these issues. We will know whether people were killed or not killed, but not to outrightly deny those killings. So when it comes to the impact on 2023 elections, yes, it will have some impact because many of the youth are very, very aggrieved, and therefore government needs to placate them. We need to apologize. We need to make sure that this kind of situation does not occur again.
Well, we want to say thank you very much for being part of the conversation. Biodun Sowunmi is a political analyst. We appreciate your thoughts. All right, thank you all for staying with us. Coming up on Plus Politics, the World Bank blames terrorism for the decline in the economic activities in northern Nigeria. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back.